Welcome, writers, readers, and friends to the Authors Talking Bookish podcast. I'm Donna Norman Carbone, author of All That Is Sacred.
And I'm Hope Gibbs, author of Where the Grass Grows Blue.
We're two debut writers traditionally published by a small publishing house, bringing to you all the experiences that we as authors learn the hard way, so you don't have to.
We'll give you insights from the inception of a book idea to publication and beyond. And along the way, we'll share our love of books from the writer's perspective.
Hello, welcome back, friends. This is episode 17, Beyond the Launch, Shift Your Marketing Perspective. Hi, Hope.
Hey, Donna, how are you?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm great. Spring is almost here. I know we'll probably have some more, winter days, but things are blooming here. Things are green. I'm so excited. And my beloved buttercups are everywhere. So I'm thrilled.
Oh, that's nice. We still have snow on the ground.
Well, that is the advantage of being a little bit further down south. We get a little bit warmer than you do. But so what's been going on with you?
Oh, I have been getting ready for a new launch. I have a book coming up called Of Lies and Honey, and that's going to be released April 23rd. I'm super excited about it, and I've been very busy trying to get all my ducks in a row. So that's basically what I'm doing. What about you?
Well, I'm just busy still promoting my book. I've had 3 TV appearances here in Nashville within like a 3-week time period, and
That's
featured
awesome.
in some newspapers and some magazines. So it's amazing. I'm still launching it, but I'm trying to really get focused on book 2 and 3 and 4. Because unlike you, I don't have book 2 finished yet. So, and just so everyone knows, I was one of your first readers, and I adore this book. So
thank you. I know I was happy to have you read it. I'll tell you, the transition between book 1 and book 2 has been weird. Like, do I slow down my promoting with book 1 to ramp up my promoting with book 2? Do I promote both of them? It's been an interesting sort of transition.
But it's got to be a little bit easier, because I remember us a year ago at this point, and we were both in the midst. I think my book cover had just come out, and we were trying to figure out like how to get book reviews and how to get advanced reader copies to people and swag. It's so funny now being on almost a year
on the other side.
Yeah. Well, so speaking of books, like we always love to talk about, what we're currently reading. Donna, do you want to tell everyone what you're reading right now?
Sure. I just started reading Day by Michael Cunningham, who I absolutely adore. He wrote The Hours. I am a huge Mrs. Dalloway fan, as he is as well. And he incorporated Mrs. Dalloway into The Hours so beautifully. Actually, that was one of my comps for Of Lies and Honey, because I really wanted to try the 3 POV style, and it was challenging, and I'm so glad that I did it. I don't know that I did it as well as Michael Cunningham, but this book is different. It takes place over the course of a day, but over 3 years. So like, it's 1 year, the first year it takes place in the morning, the second year it takes place in the afternoon, and the third year it takes place in the evening. So it's really interesting the way that it's written. Yeah.
That sounds fascinating. I'm gonna have to check that one out.
Yeah. I highly recommend him. I love his writing.
Yeah. I hate to say that I did not read the book, The Hours, but I've seen the movie, and it's a fascinating movie. It's got Meryl Streep in it. It was an incredible book, sorry, movie. So
the movie was very good as well.
So
what are you reading?
So I was lucky enough to read Jill Hannah Anderson's book. It's her new book coming out in March, and it's called Closer to Home. And I just finished it. I absolutely fell in love with this book. It takes place in the 70s, and this character, the main character, her name is Jolie. You're just going to fall in love with her. She is so resilient. She accidentally witnesses her boyfriend's murder at the very beginning, and the people that did it are kind of after her. So she has to abandon her farm life in Missouri and start over again in this little Minnesota town. And she knows how to collect leeches, and she lives off the land, and she is just a very, you root for her immediately.
Yeah.
And then there's also a character called Bits who I absolutely fell in love with. And I wrote Jill, I was like, why don't you write a book on Bits? Because I love that character. It's a little girl that she kind of becomes like a big sister mentor to her in this town.
Yeah, I read it as well. I was an early reader and I absolutely loved it. And I've Jill has written 4 books and I've read 3 of the 4.
Mhm.
And adored them.
Yeah.
And didn't even think, she could even get better than the last one. But this is better. And
Yeah.
I loved the last book that she wrote as well.
Yeah, I've read 3 of her 4, and last year she was one of my first author blurbs. And when she asked me to not just review her book, but to do a blurb, that was really, besides your book, that was the first time that I've been asked to do that. And now I'm sitting on 3 author blurbs that I'm trying to finish, and one is for yours. But it's definitely different because as we tell our audience with writing, it's so important to have a community. And, that Jill knew that she could count on me, just like, I counted and relied on her last year.
Yeah.
So that's kind of a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. Donna, what are we going to discuss?
So today we're going to talk about what do you do beyond your book launch? Your work does not stop the day that your book is launched. In fact, I would argue that it really has just begun because now you have to really work on marketing and selling your book. So we're going to talk about different ways to do that. We're going to give you some tips, and we're going to talk about budgets too, because some of this can cost you money and you don't want your sales to be overshadowed by the amount of money that you put out. And you can go there very easily. So you really do need to make a budget.
Yeah. So one of the things that we're talking about, these are kind of outside of Instagram or Facebook ads or Amazon ads. These are different ways to launch your book. So one of the things that we're going to talk about is a book signing. So there are multiple ways of doing book signings. I have had a couple of book signings. I've had them in Barnes and Noble, and I've had them in boutique, stores here in Nashville. So Donna, why don't you talk to us a little bit about what a traditional book signing looks like?
Well, you have to approach the bookstore, or sometimes the bookstore will approach you, which is really nice. But you come up with a date. I bring some things with me. I bring some giveaways. So swag. We've mentioned swag before. I don't know that we've done an episode on it, but definitely bring some swag, bookmarks, anything that you give away and have for the theme of your book. Definitely books to sell. Plan on signing a lot. Your hand hurting by the end of the day, hopefully. But yeah, so I have not been to Barnes and Noble. I'm going to try with this next book, but I have done some signings at author events, and I've done some signings at indie bookstores.
Yeah. The one at Barnes and Noble, it was great because they did it through the cash register. So I was not having to sign, greet people, and also carry around a card, like a little credit card where you can swipe, or they Venmo you. So that definitely takes a lot of pressure off because I didn't have to worry about that. The taxes were being collected, all of that. But, you also have to understand that you don't know the expectations. You have no idea how many people are going to show up. For me, it was an hour. It was about an hour and a half drive. It was in Kentucky. So you have to figure, you've got to figure in your gas money, also your time. And although the store was great, you're the one bringing in those, all of your tables, sometimes your signage. I always have flowers at any event that I have because I lean heavily on it in my book. Swag. I mean, so there's a lot of physical labor. Like you have to get up there at least 45 minutes to an hour to set things up so that you're ready to meet people.
Yeah.
And I also bring the staff, no matter where I go, I bring them some kind of treat, whether it be donuts or muffins or cookies, just to say thank you. So when you average all that up, it can be very expensive.
Yeah. Yeah. And you mentioned something too that I highly recommend people get the Square Reader. It's compatible with an Apple iPhone, and I just find it so easy to use. I have definitely got my money's worth getting the Square Reader. And another tip too, which I didn't do initially when I started book signings, but I invested in some of those plastic like paper holders, and I created a document, or it's actually more visual than it is a document, but kind of like a flyer with my picture on it, my QR code for my Venmo to make it easy for people to pay you via Venmo, different ways to get in touch with me, different forms of payment that I take, just to alleviate some of the questions that you'll get asked from the people. Do you take this? Do you take that? What's your Venmo name? You alleviate all of that if you put it on some kind of a flyer or a tinted card on your table.
And also that QR code can also direct them to your website.
Yeah.
Because, the one I had at Barnes and Noble, I mean, I would say 40 to 30% were people that knew I was coming up, relatives and friends from high school, people who lived in Bowling Green, but the rest were people who just stumbled in. And so that way they were like, oh, are you on, Facebook or Instagram? I could just point and say, point your phone right there. And it takes them instantly to my website, and they're not having to type anything in. That's one of the good things that came out of COVID, were those codes, because it definitely, and I suggest that you, as an author, you go on and secure that. You are going to have to pay, a fee to keep it going. But I have it on my bookmarks. It's so easy because bookmarks are small and the print is very small.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely suggest that. So
yeah, I even have it. I got a table runner for my table. I didn't want to get anything with my book on it because I knew that I was going to have other books coming out. So on my table runner, which I made the graphic on Canva, and I ordered it through Vistaprint, which I usually use for my bookmarks and whatnot.
yeah.
But I decided to use my logo on there just so I could use it no matter how many books I have come out. And I even put the QR code on there. So when my table runner's out at the very front of the table, you see the QR code. So it's always there.
So all that we're saying, all this is going to be an upfront, it's a cost, but it also can pay back, because if you're doing this kind of swag and your table and all this can transfer to the next event we're going to talk about. And those are with your local libraries. Donna, have you had any events with local libraries?
I have, and I have another one coming up. Very successful. I didn't sell a lot of books there. I think maybe 12 to 15. But I had a nice audience, and most of the people in the audience had already read my book. So they asked a lot of very informed questions, which was nice. Usually when you go to a typical book signing, people have not read your book. So you're really selling the book there. Whereas at a library, you can talk about it a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a library event in Kentucky back late last year, and it was a great event. It was more, they were there to hear not me just talk about my book, but how I went from, stay-at-home mother who had never written anything longer than an email to writing a 95,000 word manuscript, because people are very curious, especially the library community. They're very passionate about books and they want to know the process. So, you also, as an author, you need to know your talking points, because I never once had a note. I stood up there for an hour talking about myself, the book, answering questions, engaging the audience. And that's the other thing, be prepared, and also bring some goodies to the library.
Yeah. The other thing that I did at my library event is I did a short reading, which I don't typically do at a signing event.
Yeah.
So it's important to ask your librarian what the expectations are. And I would say I talked about as long as you did. So, just so you know, going in. Some other ideas are in terms of local places. There's a boutique in my community that she has everything there. She has everything from kitchenware to clothing to, accessories and jewelry, but she also sells some books. And honestly, that has been my number one bookseller. I am constantly restocking her. So, reach out to boutiques in the area too. You never know, even a beauty salon might carry your books.
Yeah.
So, try to be creative and inventive. The other thing, I just got together today with two of my author friends, and we were talking about reaching out to schools to do book talks. I did a book talk at my school. I teach at a high school. So, that was easy. But I was invited to talk at another school and do like a creative writing workshop. So that's another thing that you can do if that's something that you're comfortable with is reaching out to local schools.
And back to you talking about boutique, same for me. Two of my biggest selling places that have sold my book are the same kind of store. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a bookstore. And I like how you're talking about the school events. Next month, I'm going back to my hometown and I'm speaking to the Historical Society. So there's a lot of different ways. And another way that you can connect with readers locally is through newspapers. Tomorrow, I actually have a interview with the local newspaper here in Nashville. And I also, it was interviewed by my high school newspaper. So you're right. There are so many different avenues.
Yeah. Yeah. The next thing we wanted to talk about is collaboration with other people, like other authors, bloggers, podcasters. So Hope, do you want to tell us a little bit about your experience with collaborating?
Yes, I was able to reach out, especially with at the very beginning. The bloggers were really important because I really didn't have a footprint. So I reached out to them, and a lot of times with bloggers, they'll send you about 7 or 8 questions, and they ask you to fill it out. And the first time I did that, I was like, "Oh my gosh, I've got to answer these." But now I have it in a folder. I know all these questions that I can pull at any time, and they were the ones that really gave me my first footprint, and then bloggers, back to podcasters, they gave me shows. And so that has all worked its way for me. It kept building that now I'm doing television. I've done several in Kentucky and doing in Nashville, which is a pretty big market. So just because you don't get it right at your launch doesn't mean it can't happen.
No, and I would even say, like, one of the things we're going to talk about is creating an event spreadsheet, which is a giveaway that we're going to do at the end. I would say to spread things out. One thing that I found is that I hit the ground running pretty hard right after my launch, and I got totally exhausted. This is like a long project. You're in it for the long haul. It's not like you have to fit all these events in during a certain window. So I would spread them out. I would try not to exhaust yourself with, so many events packed on top of each other.
Yeah. Yeah. And especially I think that's important if you're with a small press or you're an indie author, you're self-publishing, because you don't have a bigger machine at one of the bigger publishers that, can schedule all this. And again, a lot of the stuff that we're talking about is time and it's money. And one of another way that you can connect to keep promoting your book are through book fairs and book festivals. Donna, have you done anything like this?
Yeah, actually, they're my favorite events. I have sold the most books at book fairs, not book fairs, craft fairs, festivals. I have done book fairs, and I find that there's so much competition there that when people show up, they're overwhelmed by so many people with so many different books and different genres. But at a craft fair or a local festival, I did the Strawberry Festival in Cheshire. I'm going to do another festival closer to Christmas. I have booked that already. There's not competition. And so people come upon your table, and first of all, they love talking to authors. They don't expect you to be there. So I have the best conversations at those kinds of events. But then, they also get the idea like, oh, I could buy this as a gift. And I have sold the most books at festivals versus book fairs.
Yeah. I was able to do the Kentucky Book Festival back in November, and I sold a lot of books. I was very fortunate, but you also have to understand I was there for 2 days. And it wasn't where a lot of book festivals, you go in for maybe a 2-hour time period, you're at a booth, and then you sign and then you're gone. At this book festival, they expected all of us to be there from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. And it's a very long 2 days. So not only do you have to figure in your gas, with something like this, if you're not local, you have to figure out your hotel room, and again, you're bringing, sometimes you're dragging your, books and signage, from parking garages. So it's a lot of physical labor. I loved it. It was wonderful. But if you're not an extrovert at something like that with so many authors, I think there were like 150 authors in this big convention room. It was kind of hard to connect. You had to put yourself out there, and you have to understand what can draw people to your table. And again, a lot of it is how you're going to present your table. Like you said, do you have signage, or do you have flowers? Do you have swag? But I did one here in Nashville for 2 hours and sold a ton of books, not as many in Kentucky because I was there longer. But you also have to look at it cost versus actual profit. And also your time. Your time is important because you're a writer. You need to make time to actually write.
Yeah. Yeah. And these events, and whether it's a festival or a book fair, there's always some kind of jury fee. So you have to factor those in as well. Very few events like that cost nothing.
Yes. And what we mean is you have to apply. Most times you have to send a physical book. So think about that. You're going to be out, $17 of your book and shipping and a letter. So, you have to be, I think you should be selective. For me, Kentucky was a natural fit because my book takes place in Kentucky. I'm not going to Florida probably to do a book festival, unless I just happened to, was going to be down there. So, so Donna, we're starting to run out of time, and there's another really interesting way to promote your book after the launch, and you've done it exceptionally well. You want to tell us about that?
Thank you. I think you have as well, though. Book awards. So a book award is a really good way just to give your book some credibility. You're submitting with, many other applicants, and your book is going up against theirs. So when you win a book award, it's a really cool thing. And it often leads to other experiences. Like Hope and I won the BookFest awards, and we, as a result of that, had the opportunity to see our books in Times Square. I won the Literary Global Award and had the opportunity to see my book in print. There was like a 2-page spread in a magazine called Red Silk Carpet Magazine, which is a magazine that has a lot of traction. There are a lot of subscribers. So not only does it give your book a little credibility, but it also can lead to other opportunities.
Absolutely. And, I've been very lucky. I think I've won a total of 7 awards, and I think I've been a finalist for like 7 others, but it does give your book some credibility. If someone's, just randomly going through Amazon or even your website, and they see that, that your book has won an award, they may give it a second look. And it's also a great way to promote. I mean, you promote that you've won an award, and one thing leads to another. And I also think that my winning awards has helped me get in to these news stations that when I first started, I was not going to get on because I was a stay-at-home mom. I had not a big following. I was a debut novelist, but now I am an award-winning author. So I think that's been a very big thing. And we got to meet because of our book awards.
Yeah. Yeah, that was fun.
That was
One
fun.
thing that I would like to say as well is that when you become an author and you start seeing these things, one of the things that I would do, I'm kind of dovetailing into the do now almost, but um, one thing that I would do is pay attention to what's going on with other authors, whether it's, on Instagram or Facebook. If you see another author win an award, you might want to check out that award. We didn't know, we weren't given a list of awards to apply to. Those were things that we had to seek out. And one way to do that is by really watching what other authors are doing. Even if you've missed the deadline, I have a document, which I think I told you about, Hope, one time. It's called a tickler document. And basically it's, the 12 months of the year, and it kind of cues me in on when I need to submit to something or when I need to register for a festival or a fair if I missed it. Because sometimes you don't know, and sometimes it's too late. I tried to get into a festival and it was too late, even though it's 6 months out.
Yes.
So
That happened to me as well, because I saw it on someone's social media and it was a
Right.
natural fit. And when I reached out, they were like, we would absolutely love you, but you've already missed it. But how about next year? So
Yeah.
but another thing about book awards, they're not cheap. Sometimes they're, you're going to spend some money for the entry, and sometimes you can send an ebook, but sometimes they actually want a physical copy. So again, you have to figure out with a budget, is this going to be worth it? Am I going to get my money's worth out of it? So, Donna, we could talk about this subject all day, but we are kind of almost gone over. So, as I love to say, as our teacher, what's your do now for everyone?
Okay. So our do now first is to determine a budget. How much are you willing to spend? Then you want to take a look at what you want to do with that budget. How much of that budget is going to go to festivals or fairs or book awards? And you can kind of balance that out with some of the free things like signing at a local boutique or going to a bookstore, an indie bookstore, to sign. In the do now, I have an event spreadsheet that we copied for you. And so it's something that I use, and it's just a master spreadsheet. And I just kind of plug in when I sign up for an award, when I have an event coming up. And it's a good way for me to look at one document to kind of plan out the whole year. So feel free to download that from our website.
Yeah. And Donna, before we go, can you tell everyone where they can find us?
Sure. Well, first of all, I would like you to like and comment on this episode if you are willing, if you found it at all helpful to you. Our website is www.authorstalkingbookish.com, and you can find our full show notes there, as well as the free download that we talked about.
Okay. And finally, let's talk about our next episode, because we have another guest. Donna, you want to tell us about that?
We do. We're very excited to have Lainey Cameron. She's an author. She's a book marketing coach. She's a nomad. She travels all over the place, and she is a podcast creator and podcast creator and host of the best women's fiction.
Well, I could sit here and talk about all these points, and we should probably revisit it in a couple of months down the road. But again, Donna, it was so much fun spending a little time with you.
It was fun spending time with you as well.
Okay,
bye, everyone.
Thank you for joining us today. I'm Hope Gibbs.
And I'm Donna Norman Carbone. It's time for you to get to work.
We look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks with another tip from your author friends.